Hello, everybody. Welcome to my podcast. My name is Sam Krutenog. I'm a freshman student athlete here at UCLA, and I'm currently on the water polo team. I chose to study women in Egypt because I was always fascinated with ancient Egyptian culture ever since I was young. What also interested me was how far ahead of their time ancient Egyptian women were compared to women in other cultures and countries around them. The research question I chose is actually very, very interesting. Although women between the 6th dynasty and middle period of ancient Egypt had equal social and legal rights as men, they were shunned from attaining high positions of jobs or government or whatever it might be. Barbara Watterson, a very, very famous Egyptologist and author, writes in her book called Women in Ancient Egypt. She speaks upon the differences between men and women in ancient Egypt society. She says, "The respect accorded to women in ancient Egypt is evident in almost every aspect of the civilization, from the religious beliefs to social customs. The gods were both male and female, and each had their own equally important areas of expertise." Watterson is describing women between the 6th dynasty and the middle period. This was actually the closest time period that historians know of where women were treated most similarly to modern society. Society's goal? To reach the divine feminine. This was a religious and spiritual idea that was profound throughout ancient Egyptian society. It represents the connection to the part of your subconscious responsible for care, intuitive drive, and the ability to empathize. To practice making their connection to the divine feminine stronger, women and men worshiped the god Isis. Isis was one of the most important goddesses in ancient Egypt's history. She was a role model to women everywhere, shown through her empathy and love. Even men were encouraged to reach her potential because of how positive society had become. Women and men were socially and legally very similar and were treated as equals. However, their main difference was seen directly in the workforce. However, there were always women that succeeded despite the obstacles that were put in their way. An example of a woman who persevered is Cleopatra. She is perhaps the most famous woman in ancient Egypt's history. After the Egyptian throne was given to share between Cleopatra and King Ptolemy XIII, her younger brother, it did not take long for death threats to cause Cleopatra to flee to Syria in 49 BC. This did not stop Cleopatra from getting what she wanted. In order to gain back the throne, she has a romantic relationship with Julius Caesar, the famous Roman emperor. She is a clear example of a powerful woman who fought against the sexist society that did not want her to rule Egypt as woman. After she gained back the throne, Cleopatra lived a lavish lifestyle. She partied, she drank, and she had a lot of fun. This angered a lot of noble citizens and people of royalty. Because of Egypt's direct connection to Rome, a lot of Roman consul men and people of royal blood began to get really angry and frustrated with Cleopatra. Cicero, a Roman consul, in 43 BC, gave this speech and talked about Cleopatra. Her way of walking, her clothes, her way of talking, her embraces and kisses, her beach parties and dinner parties, all show her to be a Tartar. In fact, the Romans released a coin that portrayed Cleopatra on it. Her face ugly. They did this on purpose. Ptahhotep was a very famous writer and leader in ancient Egypt. He was the vizier. The vizier means you're second in charge after the pharaoh. He writes the many books called the Instructions of Ptahhotep. In these instructions, he basically tells his readers how to live life and social rights, legal rights, all these kinds of things. He says this: "You must love your wife with ardor, fill her belly, clothe her back. Ointment soothes her body, gladden her heart as long as you live. She is a fertile field for her Lord." He's basically saying women are socially equal to men, and that's very similar to how society is today. But listen as he turns the tide. In his next paragraph, he writes, "Do not contend with her in court. Keep her from power, restrain her. Her eyes her storm when she gazes. Thus will you make her stay in your house." This proves that women were just as equal as men in the court system and In fact, men feared women because they didn't want to get their power taken from them. If ancient Egyptian society had it so that men were more powerful in a courtroom than women were, the patriarchy would rule all of Egypt. Ancient Egyptian women had a very moderate role in the working force and never acceded to anything of severe importance. They were famous for brewing beer, sandal making, basket weaving, jewelry work, seal making, textile weaving, and making charms and amulets. Ancient Egyptian women had a very moderate role in the working force and never acceded to anything of severe importance. They were famous for brewing beer, sandal making, basket weaving, jewelry work, seal making, textile weaving, and making charms and amulets. However, earliest medical records show that women were in fact running the medicine. This proves that women were the first doctors. Women were also responsible for cooking, cleaning, raising children, and running the household only when the husband was out. Religiously, goddesses were seen as just important as gods were. Amun, A-M-U-N, is known in history as God's wife. She was worshipped by the Egyptians, and she gave women authoritative power. This was because men did not want to upset Amun by hurting their women verbally, physically, or heartbreaking them of any kind. However, the only way for women to get in a powerful working position would be for her to marry a very important man. Now let's talk about what was known as the domestic cult. See, most Egyptians did not want to go to temple to pray or just didn't find a reason to do it. They liked to pray in their homes, privately or as a neighborhood or family. They used altars to portray gods and goddesses and often put down offerings to them. Domestic cults started as a response to women's work responsibilities. Women created these altars, portraying a strong sense of feminism. This group can be seen as the first feminists of ancient Egypt. Apart from being beer brewers or textile workers, women were also sealers. This was considered an important job in society. Sealers would seal locks, containers, other things of importance closed so that nobody could get them. See, this wasn't that important to society, but men wanted to make women seem like it was important. The only problem with this was these jobs did not change for 833 years, from the beginning of the Old Kingdom of Egypt to the end of the Middle Kingdom, 2613 to the year 1782 BC. My overall summary and thoughts on the subject are quite interesting, actually. The social respect that women received in ancient Egypt is more than a lot of countries in our modern world today. Egyptian society was ahead of its time. Women probably could have fought back against the patriarchal workforce before, especially since they had legal power, but I guess they didn't because they thought it was a societal norm. If there had been social media in ancient Egypt, countries like Greece may have treated their women differently. They would have seen how to properly treat a woman and respect her because she deserves to be. Religion, cultural belief, and other forms of worship may have saved women from being second-rate citizens. This is because men thought that treating women was going to help them get closer to God and be fine in the afterlife. The worship of Amun, Isis, and the divine feminine also helped this cause. And today, women are still fighting to have equal rights in the workforce, which is saddening. Ancient Egypt was one of the most beautiful time periods in the history of the whole world. There was art, literature, knowledge, and fascinations everywhere you looked around the corner. People were experimenting with so many different things, from sex to art, writing, music, all these different kinds of things that made that time period flourish. Ancient Egypt could be argued as one of the golden ages of all periods of the entire world. Everybody respected each other equally, regardless of gender, race, where you lived. It was a beautiful time to be alive.